Hey, it's Liz DiAlto, and this is the Untamed the Wild Soul Woman podcast. From body image, sex, spirituality, money and relationships, to motherhood, creativity, business, communication, and desire, Untamed the Wild Soul Woman is the place to come for real stories and powerful advice to help you reclaim and redefine womanhood in the 21st century. Elizabeth DiAlto here with a quick announcement and special invitation for you before we get into today's episode. If you've been listening to the podcast for the past several weeks, you've heard me mention that I am currently filling a 6-month mentorship that'll start in January and run through June in 2016. It's called the Untame Yourself Women's Leadership Council, and I just wanted to take a moment before the show today to give you a little more information in case you've been thinking about applying, wondering if you should apply, and would like to know, is this something that you could personally benefit from in 2016? So to give you an idea of the type of women that are applying and what women really seem to have in common is a lot of transitions. I'm getting a lot of women applying for the mentorship who are either transitioning in careers, in relationships, or going through transitions of their kids being young, and now they're a little more old and are having time and space to do more things for themselves. So a lot of transitions are coming together in the group. I'm also noticing a lot of women who are ambivalent in relationships, who are wondering if they should be in a certain relationship, not in a certain relationship. And of course, women who are desiring to connect more to their own femininity, to really learn to trust, love, and accept themselves, know who they are, and really develop a strong personal identity if for whatever reason in their life, they just don't feel like they have one. They don't feel super connected to themselves, their own personal truth, their power, or their soul. And also to give you an idea of the women I'm accepting, man, it's been so cool to see how many women have a real laundry list of things that they're just sick and tired of, that they're super fed up with, and have finally come to a place where they're ready to deal with it. They're super scared. They don't necessarily know how to do it on their own, and they don't necessarily have a support system. And so a lot of women I'm accepting are super excited to have the support system, to have a mentor, and to have a guide as they navigate these struggles and these challenges. I'm also noticing there's a lot of women who are just ready. They are ready to take these things head on finally, and they're no longer willing to silently suffer or struggle, or to pretend that these things aren't happening, or to let them go unresolved in their lives. So if you want to apply, you can go to untameyourself.com/mentorship. And I'll share one more thing with you. The process of filling out the application alone is worth the experience, because the questions I put on that application aren't just questions that help me figure out whether or not I'd want to invite you to the mentorship, but there are probably also questions that knowing the answers to would be really valuable and useful for you to get clear on going into 2016. Some of these are questions that you're probably not asking yourself, and it's super useful to even just go through the experience of filling out the application. So don't count yourself out. Don't think you need to be any kind of special type of person, certain kind of person. If you have any of the issues, if you have any of the struggles or any of the desires that I already described and mentioned, go ahead and fill out that application at untameyourself.com/mentorship. I'll be taking applications through December 30th only, and I will be wrapping up interviews in the first week of January. So don't miss out on an experience because you're feeling scared or nervous. If you feel any kind of tug, fill out that application, and I can't wait to speak with you. Now for today's show. Elizabeth DiAlto here, your host for the Untamed the Wild Soul Woman podcast. If you are watching, you could see that I'm sitting here snuggled into a little corner. Michael and I are sharing a cottage in Kauai here in the little town of Kapa'a, where we've been on vacation for about a week now. Actually, it's officially a week, and so we've been making it work with our calls and with our recordings and everything in our little cottage. It's actually been kind of fun. So I'm sitting on a pile of pillows. I've got a dresser behind me. The walls are purple. It's really sweet in here. So if you're listening, you also might be able to hear some rain and some storms in the background. The wind's been blowing like crazy, and it's been pouring for almost I would say about half a day. It started pouring last night, and it's still going. So just to tip you off to the tropicalness of the background situations in case you notice any of that. So for today's Ask Elizabeth, this question comes from a private client of mine. She wrote in and she said, I would love an Ask Elizabeth episode to be something along the lines of, what do you do when you wake up on the wrong side of the bed or let a conversation go somewhere you don't want it to and become overwhelmed with self-doubt or the need for external validation? I think those of us who work with you or just read your stuff harbor a somewhat delusional fantasy that you have managed to find a way to suppress all of these destructive feelings, when in reality, I suspect that your humanity gets the best of you sometimes and you don't cope as well as you might. So that's my question. It's a great question. So what happens when you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, or when a conversation goes in a direction you didn't want it to go in? So really, the question is, what happens when life takes over? What happens when things don't go the way that you wanted them to go? How do you react? How do you show up? What happens when a life circumstance or a scenario grips you and you do get caught up in some of the less conscious, less aware, or less awake reactions maybe? And so of course that still happens to me sometimes. I will say now, where I am in my life, I typically can move through those things just a bit quicker than I used to. So they still happen. It just doesn't last long. So for example, in a conversation with a friend of mine a couple months ago, I remember saying something like, yeah, it's very rare anymore to have a bad day. Like, it's very rare that something could ruin an entire day of mine, let alone a week or a month or even longer than that. I might have like a rough couple hours, maybe even half a day where I'm feeling some kind of crappy emotions and I don't feel well. But for the most part, I'm able to feel things, or to talk through them with the person it involves, or to have some practices to get myself out of that feeling state as quickly as possible, while still honoring those feelings and what's going on. So to answer the question, yeah, so waking up on the wrong side of the bed, sometimes we wake up and we already feel stressed, or we feel overwhelmed, right? Or we have stuff going on in our life. Most of the time, if that's the case, it's because you're in your head about it, right? You go into the fear or the worry or the doubt place, and you're overthinking things instead of dropping into your body and feeling through what's really present here, what really matters, what's really important. So yeah, any type of spirals into deeper fear or worry or anxiety or doubt, that's all head stuff. That's all a really good indicator that you're in your head. You're not necessarily being present with your body sensations, your emotions, and tuning in with what your deeper feelings below the layer of the mind are, right? So some things you can do when that happens is, first of all, this is an energetic tool that I've learned from one of my coaches, but also a practice I've been doing for years. I just like the way she does it best. You can cut cords. So if you're watching this, you could see me, but if you're not watching, what you do is you just take your hands like karate chops and you wave them in front of your body as if you're cutting the energetic cords to any of that fear, thought, worry, doubt, limiting beliefs, whatever it is that's coming up for you, anger, frustration with another person. You cut the cords. And here's the thing about cutting cords. You cannot cut the cord of love. So don't worry about that you're going to cut someone off or cut someone out of your life permanently. If it's an important person in your life, if there's a strong foundation of love, you're never going to cut the cord of love, but you will cut all the icky, sticky, unnecessary other stuff that's keeping you in fear and doubt and worry. So that's just a simple energetic practice, is to cut the cords. The next thing you're going to want to do is ground yourself into your body. And so the easiest way to do that is to just breathe. Is just to breathe super deeply all the way down into your belly. Push your belly out and then hold it there for a couple seconds. And then take a big exhale. So for those of you that listen to the podcast, you may or may not know that I have a book. It's called Untame Yourself, Reconnect to the Lost Art, Power, and Freedom of Being a Woman. You can get the book. It's on Kindle right now. The print version will be out late February or early March in 2016. So for now, grab the Kindle version. You can go to untameyourself.com/Amazon. And in the book, you can get the book companion, which you don't even need the book for. You can get that at untameyourself.com/companion. When you download that companion, I have a bunch of practices in there for getting into your body. So I have a 2, 3, 4, a 9-minute morning ritual that you can use, which is a great way, no matter how you wake up, in just 9 minutes to set the tone for your day, to come from a much more grounded and better feeling and intentional place. I also have an instant body connection practice in there. And these are things that you could either read, listen to, or I have videos for them as well. So those are short practices. I don't think any of them take more than 10 minutes to help you drop into your body and ground yourself into your body. Again, when you find you're getting pulled in a direction because you're caught up in your head with the wheels spinning. What happens when, the second part of her question was, when a conversation goes a way that you didn't want it to go? So I love the work of Byron Katie, and that comes to mind for me because a big theme of Byron Katie's stuff is loving what is. And so when you're living your life from a more conscious, awake place, you don't fight against so much the circumstances or the situations because you understand that the current circumstance or the current situation is not your permanent reality. So everything is temporary. Everything is happening, as Byron Katie says, for you, not to you. So you have two choices. And I talk about this in the book as well. When something is happening to you, like an undesirable situation, a conversation goes awry, maybe the person you're interacting with has not done the amount of personal work that you have, and maybe they're having an immature reaction to something, and they're not understanding you, they're not interpreting what you said, they're not taking it the way you meant it. You can't control that, and you can't do anything about that. Again, what you can do is stay grounded, and you can stay in your own experience, and you could just trust that they're having whatever the experience that they need to have is, even if it's immature, even if it's irrational, or even if it's not what you were hoping for. So that's happening for you. So you can sit back and go, I wonder why this is happening. Like, where's the lesson for me here? And there's two things after you ask that question. Sometimes the lesson is readily apparent for you, and sometimes it's not. And if it's not readily apparent, my advice is to just let it go. Things that want to be dealt with and that want to be handled and are ready to be handled are always bubbled up, like right at the surface or just below the surface. And they're easy to put your finger on, oh, that's what it was. But if you have to really dig and try to figure things out and analyze, that's dangerous because that's when we start to put meaning on things that isn't necessarily true. And that's just kind of a waste of time, effort, attention, and energy. So get the lesson if it's immediately apparent. And if it's not, let it go and trust that it'll come back up when it's ready to be handled. So in that moment, you could really energetically and physically, what I like to do when conversations aren't going super well, whether it's on the phone with someone or whether that person's in front of you, in your physical body, drop your shoulders down and pull them back, literally pushing your heart space forward, and really imagine. And sometimes you might be visual, you might be more of a sensory person. So if you're visual, just imagine shooting love out of your heart. And it could be a golden white light, it could be a beautiful pink, a beautiful green. Any of those colors work, whatever feels best and most resonant for you. Imagine just shooting your love unconditionally towards this person, even though they're not reacting the way you were hoping they would have, or it doesn't really feel good, the things that they're saying. You could always love people through things. And love is always the appropriate response. I forget where I heard that quote a number of years ago, but it's so great, right? Because instead of hopping on the bandwagon and hopping on the train with them of irrational, immature response, or being a victim, or taking things personally that aren't meant to be personal, you could always, always, always blast someone with your love, with your openness, with your acceptance, and with your approval. And when you're doing that with your physical body, and when you're doing that energetically, you'd be surprised at how you can actually change the course of a conversation, or just notice the person can like soften and calm down and kind of melt into that loving energy that you're creating. And sometimes people are so stuck in their own stuff that there's nothing that you could do. So you have a choice there. You could set a boundary. You could say something like, this was totally not my intention of where I wanted this conversation to go. I don't really feel safe continuing in this manner. So I'm going to remove myself from the conversation now, and we can revisit this later, maybe when we're both feeling better. Because you do not have to sit there and take it when someone is just either being mean or being rude or being inconsiderate, or really when the conversation isn't actually going in any kind of productive direction. And one of the reasons why I recommend doing this is because it's a pattern interrupt. More than likely, if someone is taking a conversation in a direction, or like having one of those reactions, or wanting to blame it on you, or whatever is happening, that's how they react to a lot of things in life. And so when we don't appease that, when we don't react right back to that and try to like make them feel better or apologize or whatever it is that you might have done previously, it interrupts the pattern, and it kind of just throws a wrench in their system of how they've been reacting and interacting with people, that, you know, this doesn't work. Because if they were trying to get something, or if they were trying to get a reaction out of you, whether that's consciously or unconsciously, by choosing to say, hey, you know what, I'm complete with this conversation, it's not going anywhere, and I'm going to remove myself, maybe we can revisit this at another time, it interrupts their pattern. They didn't get the payoff or whatever it is that they wanted to get out of behaving that way, and it just shows them it doesn't work with you anyway, right? And so that's a great boundary to have. And it's not about avoiding, right? Sometimes you do want to lean in and ask some questions. So I'm curious, that's not what I meant, and that's not what I intended. I'm wondering, what is it for you that is causing this anger or whatever to come up? And you can stay calm and neutral and super loving if it feels like something that you want to lean into, not necessarily something that you want to eject yourself from. And again, you will know which choice to make if you're already grounded and in your own body, so you can feel into what feels right and good and true for you, and not necessarily be operating from your head, which might make more fear-based reactions coming from like an anxious place or a worry place, or like she asked in her question, seeking external validation. And so just always remember, the most important approval and the most important love for you to get is your own. So you want to make choices that are the most loving and compassionate for yourself first and others second. You can always, always, always be sending love and compassion to the other person, but the love and approval has to come from within you first to even show up fully in those conversations. And so I have a feeling we might have some follow-up questions or some nuances that you guys might be curious about, because I kind of hit some broad strokes as well as some specifics on my answer here. So if you have a follow-on question to that, come into our Facebook group at untameyourself.com/Facebook, or you can also always leave a comment on the post on the website. And this is episode number 62. So you can go to untameyourself.com/episode-62 if you want to leave a comment. I'd also love to know your own answers. How do you react? What do you do in these circumstances when either you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, or you're interacting with someone and it's totally not going the way you were hoping or wanting it to go? So thank you so much for tuning in today. As always, these Ask Elizabeth episodes are a bit shorter. They're just little Q&A episodes so we can connect. I love getting your questions. If you have a question, you can send it to hello@wildsoulmovement.com. We keep a running file with these questions so we can pop in and answer them each week here on the show. So thank you so much, and I will see you or hear you next week.
I think that in this culture, we put so much emphasis on thinking, like the only way to know the world is through thinking about it. And that's not true. I mean, we also know the world through our senses and through our imagination, and just through being like present in the moment. And it's those other things, particularly being present in the moment and feeling your connection to, to trees or to grass or to nature or to music. These are the things that reassure us that we're not alone, and they get us out of our head and they keep us sane.